Hello, I'm Toby, and we're off to Metabilis 3 with Tommy and Choji and my special guest, Annie. The times and places are happy. I don't know why everything rhymes, but essentially it's a Doctor Who episode commentary podcast, and a positive one.
Hi there, this is Annie Wallace here. I play Sally Sinclair on Channel 4's Hollyoaks. So, when Toby asked me which story would I like to talk about, I had a big think, and I have chosen Planet of the Spiders.
Well, hello everybody. It's time for Planet of Five, Planet of Spiders, episode The Spiders. I mean, it's not as confused as the that's quite a confused introduction. Not quite as confused, I would say, as the story is getting at this point, with cliffhangers skewiff and storytelling akimbo and credits that don't quite match up, but as I'm sure that's very much only a thing that shakes my particular coconuts. But let's see how we go as the Pertwee era enters its last 50 minutes. Many of about 15 of which are the same from one episode to the next. But let's see as we I'm gonna watch from the beginning this episode of Doctor Who, which was aired pretty much 5 months less one day after I was born. So I don't remember it first time round, although I was probably in a house where it was on, but my mind was probably on sleep or milk. Okie dokie, so let's watch from the beginning in 3, 2, 1. So it's been great fun having Annie Wallace join me for this. I can't remember where I first met Annie. I think it must have been at maybe at Shirley's birthday party. But anyway, I knew her from her acting work before I cottoned on to the fact that she was one of us. But you know, we're dotted about. We're like sleeper agents. You don't have to get talking to somebody for too long to find out. I mean, then occasionally you get, you know, the people who are like, yes, I'm a massive fan, but they're not really a massive fan. You know, they've never bought Doctor Who magazine or a DVD or, you know who Alan Bromley is. But I think Annie, as she has proved, is pretty clued up on all things Who. So here we go. Here's a funny little moment of Pertwee magic. Oh dear, you thought I'd come to rescue you. I'm actually surrounded by guards. That we've turned into a cliffhanger. I remember when I first saw that cliffhanger going, I'm sure that's not what I'd imagined from the book, because I used to go through the books, and you could sort of almost do it where you could break it into chapters depending on you know how many episodes the stories are, and work out what you thought the cliffhangers were. And I remember being really surprised by this, but that's because actually the ones I thought the cliffhangers were the original cliffhangers. Now, a word for John Dirth. Something interesting. Something struck me when I was talking to somebody recently. I don't talk lightly about being a drinker. In this day and age where we have to waive our shortcomings in order to get sympathy. I'm not really wild about that, but I mention it, I think, if it's useful. And I've noticed that since John Kane alluded in the documentary to Barry Letts doing a nice thing and giving somebody in the cast a job, even though they were known for having a drinking problem. I've noticed a few reviewers recently, and I've noticed this happens with a few things, that you get a little bit of information and put two and two together for something the most exciting reading. So I've read a couple of things that say, and yeah, I mean, he was an alcoholic and he's obviously drunk for some of the scenes, and I go, do you know what? I'm not sure he is. I think what you've done there is you've had a little piece of information given to you, and as I say, you've sort of sexed up the dossier. That happens with a couple of happens with a couple of other things. I noticed somebody on a forum once, was saying who didn't get on with who, and somebody went, "Oh, John Pertwee hated Douglas Camfield because there was a scene in Inferno where he made him answer the phone in a particular way." And you go, "No, I recall the way that anecdote was. John Pertwee just said Camfield was interested in camera angles, and I had to answer the phone, and it wasn't really my way of working to answer the phone in the way for the camera angle." And that was translated into they hated each other, and that's why Camfield never worked on the Pertwee era again. And it's a thing to do when I sort of research, is that you sometimes go, "Oh, here's a potentially really interesting story," and then I think the key is to go, so it's probably not likely to be true because life's not usually that sexy, or you can't actually glean it from the available information. And if my understanding of boozers is correct, and I've been around a lot, is that if Dearth was given a nice big job here, he would have done that thing that all drinkers do: go, "Well, I'll prove that I can do it. I won't touch a drop for the whole of production." And then, of course, having proved it to themselves and done the job, go, "See, so I can actually give up whenever I like," and then probably started drinking again afterwards. But I think it's wishful thinking. It's after a sexy story. If you're to look at this and go, "Oh, well, he's obviously drunk." It's a bit like the Tautalian doesn't speak in a French accent on film in Ambassadors of Death. Look at all those scenes in film where he doesn't speak in a French accent. It's four words. But again, because somebody in a book once went, he doesn't do the French accent on film, that soon gets translated into other places in, "Oh yeah, there's scenes where he doesn't speak in a French accent." Because again, it seems a bit more exciting when the truth is sometimes less than that. And I think I'm particularly touchy with the alcoholic thing, because I was reading something else on a forum where they were talking about actors who died close to transmission, and oh dear Jenny Laird. But mother, we must go, if only to get you a book about acting. Oh, I've banged my head, and it's extraordinary, isn't it? And Ralph Arliss has a fantastic part in the last Quatermass as Kick-Along, leader of the sort of Stonehenge gang. And had a great face for sort of did a lot in the 70s, early 80s. Is it Ralph or Rafe? I can never. I think I saw him spelt in Spotlight a couple of times. Rafe, Raiph. And I'm sure somebody I've interviewed, I think, refers to him as Rafe Arliss. I had a teacher who we thought was called Ralph, but he pronounced it Rafe. It's the same spelling. It's Rafe Fiennes, isn't it? Oh, this is the doctor sort of name dropping and going, "Oh, who's that fella?" This is a beautiful bit of sort of Pertwee action. Is that I'm going to name drop, but I can't remember who he is as I get out of the thing. That's beautifully John Pertwee. Poor old Geoffrey Morris just has to spend this whole thing looking slightly flummoxed, and I always forget. I always think, does he just get left there? But I'm always surprised, and I remember last time I saw this, going. Because they do actually rescue him, don't they? His sons come and rescue him. I'm not sure they do in the book. I can't remember. That might just be me forgetting. I'm gonna sneeze. But yes, on the alcoholic thing, I saw somebody list Jack Cunningham from The Reign of Terror, who dies. I think he's the first actor after Jean Conroy from The Dalek Invasion of Earth, who actually dies before her episode is broadcast, bless her, to die after appearing in Doctor Who. And this person had put alcoholic. Now I've researched Jack Cunningham, and there is a news story about him being arrested for being drunk and disorderly. But to use that one piece of information and go, so therefore his early death must be due to the fact that he's an alcoholic, is again, I think, sort of, it's filling in too many blanks for me to be proper research. But anyway, as I say, that may be just because. I have a dog in that fight, but it's a slightly more nuanced condition than somebody who is an alcoholic is drunk all of the time and I can spot it, and that must be the cause of their early death. But anyway, I've probably spent too much time talking about boozing with Planet of the Spiders Part 5. I really like these scenes. This is very Doctor Who. You've got a fantastic actress in a glorious costume talking to a very good prop of a monster, and played absolutely straight. I think that spider prop is superb, of the Queen, and I like the fact that the sort of internecine spider wrangling. Ha ha. Pertwee knows how to. I always say that Davison's and Tennant are great at corridor acting, but Pertwee's very good at a kind of, oh, I've seen something around the corner, I must go and hide. I think and Matt Smith I talked about in the God Complex a lot, didn't I? I think there really is a thing to your Doctor Who. I think when you do the audition, they should actually give you a little bit of a corridor workshop to see if you've got what it takes, because it's a very important part of the job. Oh, poor, yes. I do like Christopher Burgess's performance. He does have something slightly sort of wretched about him, and it's the way that his voice has a slightly sort of broken quality. But look at him; he's slightly etched with sadness. You do get the impression that he's a slightly broken man.
Because of Sarah Jane Smith, of course. I want her back just as much as you want Lupton.
Yeah, look, he's the spiders sort of take over these poor fellows because they've all come here looking for something, and they're not, unlike Lupton, they don't have a thirst for power or revenge. They're actually trying to find peace of mind, which is why they're sort of easily preyed on. I think if you did this set now, you'd put a cobweb in there, wouldn't you? And what is that? What is that supposed to suggest cobwebs behind it? Just does look slightly like the sort of lighting rig wires, doesn't it? And I think the sort of alien thought process of going, you can't call them spiders, you have to call them eight legs, is again a nice little sort of touch about we're not like them Earth spiders we descended from. He doesn't actually get much to do in the last episode, old Lupton. They kind of lose sight of what to do with him. But I do like the image of the tweed jacketed man chatting to the intelligent spiders. And of course, this is where the Russell T Davies thing comes in and going, it has to somehow relate to Earth. Is that I think we'd certainly have a lot less feeling for the story if the only thing that the eight legs on Metebelis 3 threatened were the villagers of Metebelis. I think you can eat them. Eat them. Eat them, best actor at a time. She's the Jenny Laird to be there at the end, going, you shan't be eaten.
He's my friend, I think.
Is this where Tommy gradually works his way through? It is very sweet because they have to make him sort of do that thing of talking to himself a bit. But it doesn't he go, I'll have to talk to Yates. And then he overhears and he thinks, oh no, Yates is allying himself with the bad guys, which is a perfectly good plot beat. That, Yates is allying himself with the bad guys for his own ends. But of course, Tommy is not going to have picked up on that. This is sort of slightly weird, isn't it? It's a bit Max Headroomy. Clever Lupton? Is it Clever Lupton? Clever Lupton, I like that. This is actually quite weird. I don't really remember. Sort of Tommy sort of piecing it together with fragments of his memories. It's like he's doing a telesnap reconstruction of the previous events of Planet of the Spiders. So yeah, that's right. He goes, what? And he's got an ironing. I love the way he's oh, it's because it's the cupboard under the stairs where he keeps his stuff. That's why he's got the ironing board there. But he goes, yeah, I'll ask Yates. He's my friend. And then, oh no, Yates has gone down to the cellar with Barnes. Oh, I'll ask Choji. And then I think, does he not find Choji? So he goes, oh, I'll ask the Campo Rinpoche, because of course he's actually the one you should ask in the first place if you're really worried. But I like the way he ascends up the ladder. Here we have the Great One. It's a magnificent vocal performance from Maureen Morris, who is the wife of George Galaccio. I've been to George's flat, and he's got a picture of Maureen drawn by Patrick Troughton from his hospital bed when he had one of his earlier heart attacks. This is really creepy, actually, the way that the Great One, we don't know who it is yet, but yeah, it uses Sarah's voice, uses the Doctor's voice, anything that's a sort of perversion of what we know. And do we not see I don't think we do see the Great One in this episode, do we? Instead, she does those sort of voice tricks, which is, as I say, which is pretty disturbing. And I love the sort of cave set behind it. It's only a model, isn't it, onto which Pertwee's been CSO'd. But the CSO fringing here kind of works because it's a sort of cave of radiation and it's a slightly different atmosphere. So I think you can kind of forgive it, and it's largely close-ups of the Doctor's face. And what a brilliant face he's got. And you can see it sort of taking its toll on him. He's got a brilliant face, those crow's feet and that wonderful profile, and the and this is great because it is rather humiliating, and it's not just that he's making him turn round; it's sort of making him march like a sort of cruel parody of a soldier. He's like a sort of marionette, like a sort of action man who can't control his own body. And this is the key to it all. Are you afraid? And seeing Pertwee, the most, we're used to seeing Troughton afraid. That's part of his armory. Is this sort of childlike fear that he sometimes uses to cover up for the fact that he's working stuff out. But this is Pertwee's absolutely terrified here, and it's partially because he allows himself the indignity of looking, very awkward as he sort of turns around, and he runs away from that screaming spider banshee that is the Great One. I think that's a terrific scene, and it leads us up because this is going to be the finale of the longest running Doctor, and I think they really set up the Great One there as a force to be reckoned with, seeing as he is ultimately destroyed not by the Master, as I think would have been the right way to bring the Pertwee era to an end, was to have a final big face-off with the Master, although I think the plan was that actually the Master would help to save the Doctor in the final story for them both, which would have been very, very interesting. And would have kind of worked because of the rapport that they have. But the thing that does for Pertwee is actually only in 2 episodes, and this is the first one, and we don't see it. But I still think they build it up as a big power, partially because of that sort of undignified control that, he shows that he actually has no chance, and because Pertwee acts it very, very well. Which, considering it's just 2 shots, one close-up, one sort of 3/4 body length shot against a CSO background, and that's it, is pretty good. Now that the canvas on which a Doctor's denouement is painted is as large and as rather self-consciously grand as possible. That's very good, isn't it? The spider that sort of that moves. The legs aren't obviously it's obviously got a motor in its body, but the legs are moving, but it's effective. The CSO not quite so good. I love this scene. It's actually the Buddhism that's starting to shine through for me a bit here. It's a very lovely gentle performance here from Kevin Lindsay as Choji. But is it this bit where he does it? Yeah, I love it where he says, Why haven't you noticed that I'm changed? And you don't seem surprised to find me changed. When everything is new, can anything be a surprise? Oh, Barry Letts, you've broken my heart. And that, I think, ties in a little bit with why I think I'm now going to say it was okay for me to harp on about alcoholism at the top of this, because actually there are things within Buddhism that are kind of linked with what you do when you're a recovering alcoholic in terms of trying to free yourself of ego, not hang on to resentments, to to see that anything done against you is actually more about the person than you, and it's about reframing the way that you operate. Sorry, because right now I'm going to tell Campo because Yates and Choji have been zapped. And actually that's quite spooky, isn't it? When suddenly our guys who've been hanging around for the whole thing are now going to be taken over by the spiders. Oh yes, they do come and rescue Sabor. I keep forgetting that. But yeah, the Buddhist part of the story, which I haven't really thought about. That's another reaction shot of Jeffrey Morris. So just raise your eyebrows and look slightly peeved. And they're having to pull all of this off in quite small sets with not many people. It really is Doctor Who fighting against the odds here to tell a story on an epic scale. This is actually one of the biggest sets. They filled it with one of the smallest performances. I don't know what's going on, but my daughter will act for both of us. And of course, Sarah is not quite herself, and Elizabeth Sladen's doing enough. Yes, that's right, Jenny. The police box. How should I just sort of do a little dance and look confused? But I'm looking confused for the whole thing. So it's really reaching the climax now. This is partially because I think the end of the episode's around here, isn't it? Yeah, I think this is the cliffhanger, isn't it? But unfortunately, we've had a few scenes on Metabilis 3 that were not up to scratch, and so I remember because I'd watched. Oh, this is I think my favourite line in the whole thing. I love this. You're normal. You're just like everybody else. I sincerely hope not. I love that line. Again, that speaks to so much about, how we patronise people who are neurodiverse, and actually they have perhaps more to offer than so-called normal people sometimes. Although, again, with that caveat of how there's a certain uneasiness now about the idea of Tommy being cured. So, of course, none of this is in episode 5 in the script. There's no credit for George Cormack on this episode because Campo is supposed to be the big reveal at the beginning of part 6. And weirdly for me, because I'd seen episode 6 first, I'm going, hang on, we're not that far into the episode, and already we're in episode 6. So, and I'm also going, so hang on, what's the cliffhanger? And it's because we now have various scenes, but we don't have some scenes from episode 6 in order to basically go, well, we'll have to get to a point where when we get to around the 25-minute mark, we can stop. Tommy is being very brave. He's not actually. It's wrong to say he actually turns totally RP to suggest that he's now clever Tommy. He still does have a slight burr. He's just changed his speech patterns. I do think it's a splendid performance. Now you see again as I get older, and maybe it's my own. I'm putting my own life into this. When Pertwee has to sort of sit down and basically do his amends, where he's doing his list. I stole a crystal. I've got to confess. He has to face his fear. This is all the stuff that you do to sort of rebirth yourself, if you like. It's not talked of in such highfalutin terms. When you're trying to find a way of dealing with alcohol addiction. So I found this time round the Buddhist stuff, which I just thought of, it's nice, Barry Letts, and Buddhists are nice, aren't they? And it's all about having a nice attitude and just being sort of nice, and this idea of rebirth. Much more impactful personally, and actually much more interesting as a theme in the story. Of course, you would have a sort of Buddhist parallel in a story of regeneration, because this about birth and about seeing everything as new and about cleansing you of your past mistakes and all of that sort of thing, and finding some sort of mental equilibrium is I think really important. And in fact, some people that I know that I feel have sort of got life kind of cracked a little bit are people that say, oh, I give away part of my day to meditation. I don't have that strength of character or time or ability to sit in the moment. I'm very much an itchy feet person. A scatterbrain, somebody who I find it very, 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 very difficult to sit still and sit in things that I find uncomfortable. And yes, concentrate on the minutiae of something and plan and all of that sort of stuff. So, but I'm definitely very drawn to the idea of Buddhism, and I think it particularly works well threaded into this story. So, and of course, the cliffhanger there. Tommy's earned a cliffhanger. I actually quite like the fact that, even though it's certainly by accident and not by design, that Tommy has. Because it's John Pertwee's last story, and the cliffhanger into his final episode doesn't even tease us with his death. It's like it's the nice guy, but Tommy has kind of earned it, even if it's born out of necessity. That the final Pertwee cliffhanger is one of the rare cliffhangers given to a guest star. Now, they're not hugely common. I'll probably do a podcast about it one of these days. I might have already done one, because I've done one about cliffhangers, but Thomas gets one in the Face of Evil episode 2. Professor Watson gets one, Hand of Fear episode 2. The Master, I mean, he's not a guest, he's a regular, but he gets the Demons part 3. But yeah, stories where it's not the Doctor or the companion in direct peril are few and far between cliffhangers. But Pertwee's last cliffhanger is actually given to a guest in his story. Now, what is my thing for episode 5? Now, Annie, I think, is being quite methodical, so I think, having chosen Tommy, Annie won't choose that line, because I think she's going for the sort of major hitters and then talking about the minutiae around that as she does. So having covered Tommy, I don't think she'll then go Tommy again, that line. And also that line, I think, actually belongs to episode 6, but let's not get into that right now. And I understand me coming to this is slightly coloured by the fact that I knew episode 6 very well before I then saw the first 5, and added 6 onto it, because I'd had 6 as an individual episode ages and ages before getting the other 5. I'd read the book first, of course, but it's very different watching. So I sort of spoilt it for myself, really, in wanting to see the Pertwee regeneration, and finding episode 6 to be a bit, crikey, slightly disappointing. And then, as I say, coming to it and then watching episode 5 and going, why have we started episode 6 already? But there's plenty in there. I love Tommy's line there. I love the Doctor facing the faceless one, the great one, and Pert was acting. I like Sarah's chat with the Queen, and I think that Queen spider model is very, very good. But for me, I think it has to be, and this ties in with the whole thing, and I think because we get a bit of episode 6 as well of and Pertwee going, well, I stole this thing, I'm doing my confession. But it's Tommy's chat with Choji, and that idea that binds this all together of the Buddhist retreat and the Buddhist themes and the themes of rebirth, of casting aside ego, of that when everything is a surprise, when everything is new, how can it be a surprise? That idea that you look at, and it ties in with that lovely speech he has in the Time Monster that Dennis Potter stole when he did that interview that stopped the world in its tracks, talking about the blossomist blossom, when Pertwee talks about the daisiest daisy, and it goes back to the meditation that I say I've not cracked. because my head will keep going, I need to write that script or do that podcast or do that thing or mow the lawn or, I haven't invoiced for that thing. Whereas I'm supposed to be going, concentrate on that blob you've formed in your knee and feel it go through your body. But my anyway, I know I'd be better for it. That's what Doctor Who... Anyway, Doctor Who is doing the Buddhist thing, and it ties in with the mighty Barry Letts, who is one of the Doctor Who's great figures and kindest of men. But I think it's really spoken to me more because I guess of where I am now. And as I say, I don't want to harp on about that, and I'm not comfortable banging on about that, but I will bring it up when it's relevant. But it's, it's not something... Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not. I don't have it as a badge. If we have a conversation, if you come to my house, we don't have to talk about it. If you meet me at a bar and I order lemonade, don't say loudly, "Yes, is that because you're an alcoholic?" Because it is a personal thing, but I'm in the business of sharing. It's what you do, isn't it? When you're a performer or a writer, you bring your own experience to stuff, and if it informs what I'm talking about, I'm sort of comfortable doing it without actually being that comfortable. But that's part of the deal, isn't it? So yeah, I'm not carrying it around as a badge of honor. I'm also not doing that, oh, woe is me, but I hope it informs the subject matter of this particular installment of Doctor Who, which is about the thing that I am choosing as my favourite thing about it, which is the Buddhist element that informs the whole of the Doctor's story, and of course informs the various different guest characters' stories as well, and of course Mike Yates's return, but also the theme of what the whole story is about, leading to the ultimate rebirth of the Doctor, cleansed of his sins. But I think the fulcrum of it is that exchange between Tommy and Choji, which is so beautifully surprising, and a real sort of, oh yeah, isn't that wonderful, that instead of being shocked, he just takes it in his stride, because, well, I see everything as new, and what a way to live, and what an example to us all. So yes, Buddhism, and that is my call for episode 5. What does Annie Wallace, star of TV's Hollyoaks, think?
Moving on, part 5. Well, it's all happening, isn't it? So much happening, but of course it's the first time that we see the Great One, who's this absolutely colossal spider surrounded by blue crystals, and is absolutely stark raving bonkers, but also terrifying. Now, the problem with the 70s, I suppose, is that colour separation overlay is what they called it at the time. Chroma key is what we call it now. Green screen, blue screen, whatever you want to call it, was used really heavily in John Pertwee's time when it went to colour, because they found out this was an effect they could do quite cheaply and effectively for replacing backgrounds and things like that. So, yes, some stories didn't handle that particularly well, Underworld. But this one, there's little Doctor and there's this massive spider, and, again, 9 years old, it was quite a big deal. I was like, whoa, look at the size of that spider. And yes, quite mad. So yeah, that was a big thing. So,
now, you see, I didn't dwell on the Great One much because, to be fair, and I wonder if Annie's watched the whole thing in one go, you don't actually see the Great One in part 5. You hear the Great One, and I think it's more effective for that because, as I mentioned, you rely on Pertwee's acting. You've got that bit where he's made to sort of stump around in a sort of undignified way, and he runs away because he's so terrified of this ranting thing. But I was going to choose the Great One for part 6 because that's where you see the Great One, and there's the final showdown. Which means I can't choose the Great One now for episode 6 because the Great One has been chosen. So I'm gonna. Oh, damn! I was doing so well because we were even, and that's. I think that's technically, that's a technical foul. I think you would call it in Happy Times and Places in the official law of Happy Time, the rules and regulations of Happy Times and Places. That's a technical foul because and he's not the first to have. David Quantick did a bit for Genesis as well, and I understand it when people watch it all in one go and then make a mental note. Is that you didn't actually see the Great One in part 5, so I'll leave it to the people out there to decide how if either of us sort of adopt a point in that, because we're coming into this we were 2-2, so if I'll have to leave it to the judges, which is you guys out there, but I'm annoyed. It's the injustice, so I'll have to I'll have to look at. I mean, it's wrong to plan ahead as well, but I certainly got that in my eye as kind of going, well, that's got to be the thing for part 6. So I will have to coin a phrase, surprise myself when it comes to episode 6, because everything will be new. I have to be reborn as somebody who chooses something else. But that's something to look forward to. But we shouldn't look forward, because we should concentrate and enjoy the present. That's the whole message. Live in the now. But for now, goodbye. Well, I'm dead chuffed that you're listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke. My special guest is Annie Wallace, who can be found on Twitter at Annie Wallace. I'm grateful to you listeners, to Annie, and of course to the many patrons who make these podcasts possible. And they include Simon Coling, Charles Coffin, CM. Who are you, CM? Tell me, that's the only information I have. Graham Cluley, Mark Clues, Kevin Clark, not that one, Steve Churchill, Susan Christian, Ralph Chilton, Phil Chapman, Anthony Carroll, Paul Cannington, Tim Burrows, Hugh Buchtman, David Brody, Gareth Bowley, Robin Bland, Peter Blackett, Richard Bignell, Andy Bennison, Ollie Barrett, Stephen Bamford, Richard Holt, Simon Ash, Radit Ariza, Tilt Ariza, Sebastian April, Kit Allen, Mark Aldridge, Keith Adams and Joel Ahrens. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And if you would like to join that list of people, you can do so by signing up to be a patron. That's at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. For as little as £3 a month, your name will occasionally appear on the credits. But that's not all. You get bonus material. You get advance releases. This, for example, you will have listened to 6 months before you listen to it if you're not a patron. So, it's currently, this is going live in September 2022. But if you're listening to this, you'll have had your Christmas presents, and you might have broken some of them, or eaten some of them, or worn a hole in some of them, depending on what they are. Obviously, if it's a cake, you'll have worn a hole in it. If it's a pair of jeans, you'll have eaten it. You're crazy. Anyway, I hated that. That was awful. I'm never doing that. I'm never saying anything like that again. Anyway, it felt like such a good idea in my mouth, and then it came out of it and should have stayed there, or stayed in my brain and not even got to my mouth. Anyway, listen, if you want more of this kind of gold, well, you get it anyway. But if you want to take financial responsibility for it, patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, £3 a month. But you get a 10% discount if you sign up for a year in advance. You get a 10% discount on whatever tier. The tiers go up from £3, but most things are available at the lowest amount, because it just feels wrong to withhold things. There are a couple of little bits and bobs, but all of the bonus podcasting, audio, all of that's for everybody. If you don't fancy signing up for a monthly commitment, which Patreon is, you can go to kofi.com/Toby Hadoke whenever you like to make a donation to justify the fact that these are ad-free. And if you just, if you feel that you fancy chucking a little bit my way in this sort of self-funding way that we freelancers now have to operate. And look, I know that times are tough and they're getting tougher. So I am hoping that this blather of mine somehow, I don't know, makes you smile, makes you interested, does whatever it needs to do in these difficult times. And I don't expect money. And what costs you nothing is to go to iTunes and give these 5 stars and a few nice lines of review. By rights, what I should do now is record a bit of stuff and then put most of it on the beginning of next week's episode. And you get about 7 minutes and you can go, is he actually going to give us anything new? I've been really hard, haven't I, on Poor Planet of the Spiders. It's all to do with episode 3. You know, it was episode 3 that was the problem, and then it had a sort of domino effect. And he got to episode 5/6, and had to then sort of go, and there's not even a cliffhanger here. I'm going to have to chop it about. Anyway, I've sort of covered, but it was episode 3 where the problems began. But nonetheless, I'm really enjoying Planet of the Spiders. I'm getting a bit emotional about the imminent departure of John Pertwee in a way that I've not previously. So I hope you get the same as me, really, that going in with a sort of need to be positive actually makes you feel a bit more positive and inclined to be forgiving of the bits you don't like, and see some glory in bits you otherwise might have overlooked. I think it's a good sort of lesson in life, really, isn't it? No, because that's making these sound profound when essentially it's just a man shouting into midair about a silly television program that's really for children. So let's not pretend that I've stumbled upon the meaning of life. I wouldn't dream of it. But I'm just enunciating out loud a reminder, really, for myself that because my glass can be very half empty, which is one of the reasons I'm up in the middle of the night talking to you guys, because I find anyway. But what I mean is, I think there is something to be said for trying to be positive, even if you're not of a sunny disposition, which I am not generally, is that it does help. It does help. So if I can learn to stop worrying and love Planet of the Spiders, perhaps if that's applied to real life, we might all prosper. But as I say, it might just be that it's a silly podcast with a boring man who won't shut up. But if it is, don't tell me.